Jorge, you ready? Okay. Let's call the August 17th, 2020 Dalton City Council meeting to order. Mr. Wall will lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the agenda before you, and there is one change on the agenda, is the GMA suggested ordinance after the governor changed his state of the emergency. Any other changes? Do I hear a motion that we approve it? Motion by Ms. Harden, second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Next, under public commentary, is the time we allow anybody from the public to comment on anything on the agenda or anything else on your mind in the city of Dalton. Jessica Hocker. You can, yeah, take it off. Yeah.
Okay, I've been here before. It's nice to see you all again. I want to present before you. I have just real quick. I'm just a mom of 6 and a concerned citizen. And so I'm going to read to you again what I would like for you guys to consider. Okay, so I would like to present before the council a preventative measure, which is in need of consideration. In the wake of COVID-19, there has been more advancements towards our society moving to a cashless society. This notion has been prevalent since the 1970s. However, as of late, more businesses are requiring exact change to be rendered at the time of purchase. Examples of such as Kroger, Little Caesars, Dollar Tree. These are places I frequent, obviously, because I have kids. Okay, you have to have the exact change due to the coin shortage. But herein lies the preventive measure. I have spoken to several business owners in the area. All agree that they want to be able to continue to use cash as a form of payment. As of now, there are very few businesses, even in the area, that have gone cashless, but I fear that this trend will progress at a rapid rate. And I and others feel it is necessary to prevent that from happening. And I've been speaking on behalf of businesses, but there is a large majority of our population is unbanked. And if we render no cash to be available as a payment, we are inadvertently disenfranchising them. And then furthering the Cashless Act, our privacy would be at the discretion of banks and whatever, all of our transactions dutifully noted. So it's important to note that legislations must be implemented on a local level. Examples of cities that have already done this is Philadelphia, San Francisco, New York City, the states of New Jersey, and Massachusetts, which to note, Massachusetts has done this for the past 40 years. They had already enacted a ban against cashlessness. So I would like for the council to seek advisement into what steps need to be made in regards to putting a ban where businesses have to render cash. I have examples of such if that was necessary for the council. If you have any questions, or you probably don't, I just wanted to present this as a seed, if you will, of something for you guys to think about here in the community, so we can protect our community against against the cashlessness. So
those businesses you named will not take cash anymore?
No. They are in favor of continuing to use cash as a point of a tender. But there's a couple of businesses, and I know that this is outside of our area, but Cleveland, they only allow debit cards or credit cards. They no longer, and again, this is not necessarily happening, but it could happen. And I just feel like it's if we get in front of it now, then we won't have a larger issue. But like Jack's Pawn Shop, several furniture stores. Let's see. Anyway, those are just several the businesses that I've spoken to in regards to wanting to continue to use cash as payment. So
Would be my suggestion, Jason, that you look into that and see what
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that was an issue, to tell you the truth.
Right. Well, and like New York City, de Blasio is going to be signing that in. There's, like I said before, a large amount of people that don't have banks. So it could be a real problem. Again, a preventative measure is all this is. So, there you go. Yay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. God bless y'all.
Back anytime. Next on the agenda is a proclamation for Constitution Week. If Catherine and Dale would meet me down front. I think this is a good time to put in our Constitution about cash. Is that what? This is Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd, 2020. Whereas September 17th, 2020 marks the 233rd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. Whereas every anniversary of the Constitution provides a historic opportunity for all Americans to learn about and to reflect upon the rights and privileges of citizenship and its responsibilities. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it. And whereas the Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore be it resolved, I, David Pennington, Mayor of the City of Dalton, Georgia, hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibility which the privilege involves. Thank you, ladies, for what y'all do. That's very important. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm supposed to be 6 feet apart. Thank y'all. Yeah.
Thank you.
David, may I speak just a moment?
Sure can, yeah.
I just thought I'd let the crowd know what DAR does and why we do this. We are a patriotic organization that's based on women who are descendants of people who fought in the revolution or helped the revolution. And we go into the schools each year and talk to the children about the Constitution and about the revolution so that they'll get a little bit more history. We also participate in the Veterans Parade. We do things for veterans at different holidays during the year, and we take care of veterans. We help put the flags up every time they're up at the courthouse, and we will welcome any other ideas we can do for veterans or for patriotic activities in the community.
Thank you, Catherine. Next on the agenda are the minutes from the August 3rd, 2020 meeting. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Your motion to be approved? Motion by Ms. Harden. There's second. Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Under new business, ordinance 20-12, Lorenzo Valencia and Gracia Barragan to rezone from transitional commercial C4 to general commercial C2, attractive land totaling 0.41 acres located at 915 South Hamilton Street. Ethan?
Thank you, Mayor. This request came in a while back in regard to the petitioner's desire to operate an event center out of this building that is the subject property. Of course, the building has been there for a number of years, and according to them in the public hearing, it had been used as, or has been used as, an event center for some time. However, more than 12 months has lapsed since it was used for such as an event center. And therefore, based on our non-conforming policy, since event centers are not permitted outright in transitional commercial or C4, then they had to come forth and seek a rezoning because event centers are not permitted in that C4 zone district. So what made the most sense and what was recommended was to look at general commercial. And of course, the staff analysis found that general commercial would not be out of compliance with the comprehensive plan, nor the existing land use and development in this area. Of course, the subject property and its history and its current state are such that general commercial would be an appropriate zone district for the property, as well as its existing zone district, without putting any burden on any of the surrounding properties. One of the things that I do want to draw attention to is the issue of parking in regard to specifically these event centers. Based on the square footage of the facility, the existing building, and the amount of open area inside it, they'll be required to have a minimum of 25 parking spaces. They are right now maxed out at 20 spaces, so therefore they will need to create that additional parking. You look at a close-up aerial in the handouts and some of those other photos in the analysis, you'll see that they do have a fair amount of room out back of the building, and there is a sort of alleyway on the property on the south side of the property. We were able to get a half-ton truck between the building and through that alleyway pretty easily and turn around and get back out. And so we felt as though they would be able to direct cars behind the building and create additional parking in the rear of the building. They did submit a plan with anticipation, a measured drawing of creating at least, I believe it was 10 or 12 additional spaces, which would put them well in excess of our minimum standard. That parking plan would still need to be approved, of course, by the Public Works. And you'll see that in the condition of the staff recommendation is, of course, to approve this rezoning based on lack of conflicts and issues, and of course, the compliance with the comprehensive plan. There's a couple of conditions that were attached to that. One in particular, number 4, that specifically before this property is rezoned, that city approves that parking plan. In the event, I think in discussing with Andrew just a moment ago, if it's if the council is willing to rezone the property based on all the other factors with the one condition of the parking, I believe that could be done by a condition on the rezoning that a parking plan be approved by the Public Works prior to any permits being tendered for use of that property as an event center.
And I have a question. Several months back, well, it was last year, we changed the zoning of the property at the intersection of South Hamilton and Bryant, right where it becomes South Hamilton and Elk. I believe it's an automotive business. It's going to be,
Okay, down south of the subject
and
property.
it is C2. It's those 2 lots.
That's correct, yes.
Okay,
yes.
we did that back in, I want to say like November. It was late, and I remember that Councilmember Wood talked about a fence for the residential property that sits contiguous
Yes.
there, and it looks like on the map that that's still a house. That a house that's contiguous just south to the property in question. And that
Yes.
so that's the I think there's 2 or 3 residential lots. So since we had the form, if I recall, we had one of the contingencies be on the last zoning of the automotive place. We asked that a fence, a privacy fence, I believe, be placed.
Yes.
I would hope that we would extend that same requirement on the other border, because it's the same property owners, I think, would be affected.
You bring up an excellent point, and
I just want to mention that was Councilmember Wood made that a condition.
right. Yes, I believe that is certainly a
It's like shrubs or trees, or so there's some type of a buffer that was required.
right. Well, and it's not technically required because of the zoning of those properties being commercially zoned, but it's certainly a condition that could be placed on zoning, I believe, as far as a condition that is warranted in this particular case. I would, however, add that on this property, whereas the other property had a more significant amount of room to do vegetative buffer, on this property, because of that narrow alleyway and that being crucial as part of their way to access the rear area to create parking, I would say in this case, if there was going to be any buffer created, it'd be just a side impervious fence. southern property border.
Tyree and,
I remember that.
Gary, y'all remember that?
I remember that, and I was gonna ask the people that live in that blue house, did they come and say anything about?
We did not hear any objection in the public hearing for this rezoning. And adjacent property owners would have noticed the sign that we posted out front there as far as that rezoning is concerned. So they should have been aware this property was up for
Since
rezoning.
there just still is some spotty residential occupied lots, I just think we should extend the same.
Did the other ones do it? Did they do it?
Understanding it was required, and we approved it with the contingency.
Right, they were going to be required, I think, to get some building permits, so that should fall through. We can check in on that and ensure that that's taken care of.
The other side of this house is what you're saying? It's on the other side of the house?
If you look directly to the south of that property, there are 3 adjacent lots. 2 of those lots have a single family dwelling on them.
It's the one in the picture, right? This one. Blue one. Right here. Is that the one?
Yes, sir, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So it's on the other side.
So when we rezoned these two
Yeah.
as southern, we,
Yeah, I'm just, did they do it?
I've not driven by to see, I drive by it, but I don't know if the fence is up or not. It was said to be that it was gonna be required.
Yeah.
To get our approval.
So
Mr. Mayor, Council Member Harlan, would you want to specify that be a site impermeable fence? In other words, privacy fence?
well, what he's saying though is it's going to be difficult because of the road.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the vegetative buffer would be an issue because the plant's requiring a significant area to mature into. I believe I would recommend that if something to restrict that side of fence we put there than just a privacy fence, as Mr. Parker recommended. Our typical buffer for a privacy fence, obviously site impervious, so it has to be something solid that you can't see through, and it must be at least 6 feet in height. And I believe that could be achieved there without restricting that alleyway. But obviously, vegetative buffer would require several more feet and able to mature without encroaching on the other property.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion on this?
We put it in the form of a motion that we're adding
Yep.
this contingency.
Yep.
I make a motion that we approve C2, so long as a privacy fence is placed.
Motion by Ms. Harlan, there's a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Number 4, under Resolution 20-14, a resolution of the City of Dalton to authorize the execution of the Coronavirus Relief Fund Terms and Conditions Agreement to authorize the acceptance of grant payments, including all understandings and assurances contained within such agreement, to direct and authorize the person identified as the official representative of the city or the designee of the city to act in connection with the grant application and to provide such additional information as may be required.
Mr. Mayor, this formalizes the city's acceptance of the $1.762 million under the CARES Act. This is a state allocation to the city of Dalton to be used in covering the city's costs for public health and public safety matters and for practices substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 virus.
Any questions of Jason? There a motion on this?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Harlan, second by Mr. Wall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Under number 5, CDBG CARES Act funding to provide meals to low-income Dalton residents located in the census tract areas 0010 and 0004. Meals will be provided at Matt Gaston Community Center and Dalton Housing Authority for a period of 20 days starting August 31st.
Yes, Mayor. As you've been aware, we received this money and it's taken us a couple months to get this together. We've looked at various options because HUD is specifically designed to benefit low-income persons. We had a hard time getting a program together where we would not have to verify income limits. So we were able to do that through our area. So HUD takes all these census tracts and they determine that at least 51% of the persons in the census tract have to be 80% area medium income or below. And our HUD consultants identified census tract 4 and census tract 10. And located within those areas is the Housing Authority and Matt Gaston. So residents of this area will be able to come and receive meals. They will be required to put their name and address just so that we have it for our records, but we are not looking at their income limits. This is the only way we can determine to do it. But this is from the additional funds we got through the CARES Act. And I do have to make one modification. If you remember, we did send out notifications to 98 restaurants with city business license. We had 4 respond, 2 did not turn in all their information, and 2 were scored. The high score was not the lowest when it came to dollars. So they agreed to do it together. So as we were developing this contract, the lower priced vendor said that they did not realize they were going to have to put it in individual packages to just pick up. They thought they were going to bring, the big containers and it was going to be served at the location. And this is just a pick up and go type thing. So I do need, if you will approve it, to add $3,000 to each contract to cover that. They're both in agreement, but this will provide 300 meals for 20 days, 150 at each location. And it is on a first come, first served basis. And we do have the funds. I can reallocate the funds from the administrative fees. We should have enough left over to cover it. So CDBG will be covering the amount. Well, instead of $27,400, it'll be $30,400 for each of the vendors.
And you said each person that comes has to show an ID that they live in that
They
area?
don't have to show their ID. They're just going to be asked their name and where they live. Because you don't want people from outside the area coming. This is to serve the residents of Dalton in those 2 low income areas.
I guess my next question, how can you prove where that person lives? Like if
It's going to be an honor system.
Okay.
But we have to have something showing that that residents of the city, and according to our CDBG consultant, if we do have like a sign-in sheet, that will be fine. That will meet all the HUD's stringent regulations and requirements.
Any other questions, Cindy? Is there a motion on this?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Wiles, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 6, agreement with Deo Clinic to manage Latino outreach program to mitigate impact of COVID-19 virus. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an agreement between the Dale Clinic and the city in the amount of $50,000. This cost could be offset by the city's CARES Act allocation. It's also on tonight's agenda. We all know that Hispanic members of our community have been disproportionately impacted by the effects of COVID. This is a temporary program that's designed to mobilize quickly. Dr. Pablo Perez will lead a group of 3 temporary employees to increase education and awareness in the Latino community within the city of Dalton, facilitate COVID testing and contact tracing services. These individuals will be hired through the DEO and managed by Dr. Perez for approximately 14 to 16 weeks. The clinic will receive some of that, approximately $4,000 to $5,000, to cover their payroll costs, workers' compensation insurance, auto insurance, and liability insurance. And the DO Clinic has agreed by vote to provide the city with the required reports, and they're also their records are subject to inspection by the city, as well as the use of funds. The program will be housed during its duration during vacant space at the Matt Gaston Community Center.
I think this is very timely and very important, and Dr. Perez is here. Thank you, Dr. Perez, for agreeing to try to supervise this thing. Any other questions of Jason?
Anyone to be able to go up there and I guess take the test or whatever?
That's my belief. Yes, sir.
What you, I didn't understand. What did you say, Tyree?
Would anyone just be able to go up there, just to be able to take the test?
No, I'm not sure what the. Can you come to the microphone, Dr. Perez?
The program is going to be based on focus on basically education in Hispanic community, but we're going to do testing and contact tracing. We're going to complement with a magnificent work that the health department is doing. They are doing in the mornings, and we're going to do from 6 to 8 at the testing at the community center with the promotoras. We have 2 promotoras, one else is coming here. So they already are well known in the community. They've been working with the healthcare partnership, and hopefully that will make a positive impact in slowing down the spread of the virus in our community.
Does this, I mean, does putting a program like this together give us more access to the quick saliva tests, or is that still a big city?
This is recently being approved by the FDA. This rapid test is not available here yet. If you manage your influences to bring it here, that will be in benefit to our community. But the turnaround is 3-4 days. Private labs, LabCorp and Quest, they've been doing 1 or 2 weeks. That's there is no words for that. Now they are improving, okay? But now I think it's time to identify, isolate, and do the contact tracing. That's the only way we can slow down with education.
Dr. Perez, will we doing testing at multiple locations other than the Matt Gaston?
The intention is we need to go where the people congregate. We already open events in our community. The flea markets are a target. The salons of events are a target, and educating and business parking lots. So on Sundays, we are planning to do massive testing in collaboration with the health department and other nonprofit organizations that are planning to help. Especially there are poor families that once there's somebody in the family get positive, they don't have the resources to keep paying the rent and to bring food into the table. So CLILA is another organization who is joining, and hopefully churches, many leaders in our community can join into this. Have to be a collaborative efforts if we want to see results that in our community there are many people suffering, and I think we have to be more compassionate and with solidarity and feeling the pain of others, and that's the purpose of educating the community. Have any other questions?
Well, one thing, Dr. Perez, I've noticed is it seems like it is an issue. I'm glad we're addressing this because in the highly densely populated areas, sometimes it's not as addressed as often. And plus, there's more chance for a virus to spread when you have more people in a higher density household. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'll put that in the form of a motion. We're ready to go.
Motion by Mr. Cruz, there's a second. Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, like sign. Under supplemental business, which is the change we made in the agenda itself, which has to do with the governor changing his statewide order over the weekend, which basically changed one of our own resolutions as respects to the property we own, and then a second part that has to do with private businesses. Jason, you want to explain those two?
Yes, sir, Mayor. The first one, as you mentioned, really doesn't change a great deal. The resolution about mask in public areas of City Hall. It also would require city employees to wear a mask when they're in a meeting. Individual employees in their offices would not be required to wear a mask. Under the ordinance defines an entity as a private business, an establishment, corporation, et cetera. So a mask would be required in those locations. So basically nonprofit corporations, organizations, including the property, that a warning is required before a violation could be found and a citation would be written. All businesses within the city would be considered subject to this particular ordinance under the governor's order and guidance. The businesses, however, may opt out by placing a notice on the property on the door that allows them to not participate in the enforcement. If a fine is issued after a warning, the first offense will be $25. Second and subsequent offenses after that, $50 for each offense. So it probably makes sense to say that masks are not required in other areas that are not defined here. So when a person is in residential property, when they're alone in an enclosed space, when they're at a religious ceremony, eating, drinking, at a healthcare provider, children under age 10, when the individual is having difficulty wearing a mask or donning a mask, at a polling place, and also when they're outdoors and maintaining social distancing. So the main feature of this ordinance, and we'd be asking the city attorney to fill in any gaps I miss, is that it allows the city the ability to enact an ordinance that requires a mask. The city is not required to by the order, and the mask would apply in any private business establishment, corporations, nonprofit corporations, or organization or on their property.
So let me make sure I understand. Did you say like if a private business can put a sign in the window and say mask not required?
No, sir. What happens is that the enforcement, a private business can decide it doesn't want to participate in the enforcement. And so what that means is that individuals who are within that property couldn't be cited. And so your question does bring up a good point. The ordinance would not apply to the business organization itself. It would apply to the individuals who are located in that business at that particular time. So visitors or patrons to the business would be subject potentially to citation.
Jason, if I may add, it does require that for an individual to cite citation, they be given an opportunity to don a mask or vacate the premises. They only have to failing to do it with warning from an officer or code enforcement officer required citation. Given an opportunity to comply or to vacate the premises or the city to take any action.
And Gandy, and seeing as how we cannot have a code enforcement at every single place in the city, who would be in charge of enforcing that or asking them to don a mask? Would it just be the employee that's there, or they'd have to call someone to come?
That's correct. What we've seen across the city is businesses leading the way by having mandatory masks as just their internal business policy. And so those would still be in play based on businesses continuing to do that. So an employee or manager would be able to either make that call themselves by asking the customer to wear a mask or vacate the premises, or call the police or code enforcement.
So, okay. Now, in terms of the businesses that have decided unto themselves, we are going to require a mask, most of the ones that I've seen have someone out in front making sure that you're wearing a mask as you're coming in, or they've got an enforcement mechanism. If we put this on people and they don't get the opt-out, or they don't recognize the opt-out or never even hear about the opt-out, we're basically putting it on these businesses to enforce it.
Well, obviously, the law enforcement and code enforcement would not know about an incident unless they just happen to be there. So it would require someone in the business or another customer to notify someone. The governor's instructions were to basically inform the public of the need for wearing masks and give an opportunity for those who are not wearing them to put them on first before there's any enforcement action. So it's a voluntary measure that does have some enforcement provisions, and part of this ordinance does provide for that. It does provide for the citation, but it starts with voluntary compliance by businesses and then voluntary compliance by customers who have business.
And just another concern with this, say we put this mandate into private businesses and you go into a gas station. Those are the ones that are, as I travel, I don't see a ton of mask mandates in gas stations. And you go in there and someone's got a mask on and someone does not have a mask on, but we've mandated it as a city. would that gas station, say, Gulf or the racetrack, then be liable or potentially liable to someone who says they caught COVID in a place where we're requiring masks, yet they did not enforce it?
So under this particular ordinance, any entity is not responsible for the customer's use of masks. So the entity cannot be cited by the city or fine. Additionally, the state legislature passed a statute that provides for consumption risk of COVID-19. It does require local businesses to post a sign for the assumption of risk of COVID-19, but under this particular statute, if the business does post that signage, then if you come into the business either as a customer or an employee, you're not able to sue your employer or the business. It does require that notice.
Do we have something on our website or something as a city where we're encouraging businesses to put that sign out? Because as I go around, I don't see a ton of those. I see some, but a ton of those, you assume the risk walking into this business.
That's happened fairly recently. I haven't worked with Bruce, but I can follow up with him to make sure.
I think that'd be helpful because there's lots of places that do not have that, and I'd hate to see them.
I think it's, I've seen it in one location in the city, but I think it was signed by the governor one day last week, Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday.
The language is specific to providing that form for the public use.
Does this cover schools or this has no effect on schools?
I don't think this particular one covers schools, Gandy. Is that correct? For some reason, I'm thinking it does not.
I guess one of my concerns would be when folks get off the interstate, as far as the people that get off the interstate come from all various rules and stuff, how we identify with that, if it might be some communication, if this passes to where they understand or they may understand what to do, because you have people from all over have no idea what's going on here.
I've certainly experienced that myself. I drove to Florida a few weeks ago, and drove through Alabama. And the requirements are different in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. And so what we saw was touching the board. And then had an active police to remind people of their obligation. Here, we put it on the website, and I fully expect that the news media will get this out, not just local, but statewide as well, because over the weekend, so it was top of mind for a lot of people. Imagine as cities across the state are not this level of ordinance.
Also, Getty, can you explain exactly how this is going to play out as far as restaurants go?
So the entity definition includes restaurants. And so if you were to be waiting in line, for example, outside the restaurant, you can't socially distance, you'd be required to wear a mask. If they have a waiting area inside, if there's not sufficient space for social distancing, you have to wear a mask. Once you're at the table and you're eating, no mask requirement at all. So not required to.
I guess my last question would be, I guess once it get out, you probably start having people from the public calling. Would that still be the response? Like instead of the store owner calling saying a person don't have a mask on and it's a crowd, and say something like I just call and say, would that still be considered for them to come? Or, you know?
So a person just of the general public could make a report. Certainly that's possible, as with any ordinance in the city, if it's a violation.
Okay.
Well, excuse me, would the police actually have to respond to every one of these calls if somebody calls and said somebody didn't have on a mask?
Question for the chief.
We would respond to every call that comes in. So my biggest concern with putting this ordinance into place is we're already answering about 20% more calls for service right now during COVID than what we normally answer. I've sent the weekly updates. I believe you've seen it, Mr. Mayor, Jason. So we're already pretty slammed on calls. If we start becoming the mass police because everybody that's in the store is calling in because they saw Tyree or somebody else that wasn't complying with it, it's going to diminish our response times to other things. So it is something that you need to take into place, because We do have an obligation if we get the 911 call. We're a full service agency. We are going to respond to that. Most of your major retailers have the rule, the requirement for the mask in place. And what I've seen when I'm out shopping and eating and other things is people are complying with it on their own. And I think it's been widely publicized by Governor Kemp and some of the others now that we've got to do better as a society on wearing masks. But if y'all pass the ordinance and put it in place, we'll do our part to do whatever needs to be done with it to make sure that it's safely administered. But it would create, I think it would create a burden on calls that would be answering that wouldn't be criminal in nature, but they would be mask related. Because we've got people that call us now frequently about it. About, do I have to wear a mask when I go here to get our advice on it? So it may very well push us up where we're having a harder time, and somebody may sit there for 20 minutes at the Kroger's waiting for us to get there because we're still going to do emergency calls first. So it could get a backlog of calls. But however y'all choose as the elected officials proceed with it, we're your police department, this community's police department. We're going to do whatever we're directed to do and what's safe and best for this community. I would just keep in mind that it might make us work a little bit harder, a little bit slower on some calls. Any
Last question of you. I know on social media there's been exhibits of people accosting one another, either wearing or not wearing a mask out there in other places. Have you experienced anything, any calls related to that here in Dalton?
my knowledge, we've not had any of those take place yet here inside the community. I'm sure there's been some people making snide comments to folks that come by and choose not to wear their mask. I mean, I have those thoughts when I see people out doing that as well when I'm on my personal time. But it's one of those things, we haven't had it yet, but I think if we put this out here and somebody that's the face mask activist that might get out here and start confronting people on it, there is a likelihood that you could have a confrontation from citizens with each other. People are going to comply with us because we're the police. We ask them to do the right thing. If they don't, we'll ask them to leave. If they don't leave, we'll enforce the trespassing laws of the state, which are a lot easier to address, and we'll go from there. But it's a double-edged sword. You put it in place for safety, but you may create some other safety concerns for individuals that decide to accost people that don't choose to wear masks. And it may be somebody in that protected group that has respiratory issues that their doctor said you don't have to wear a mask, or some other reason like that. So, however you choose to proceed, we will manage it and deal with it the best we can. But I think for the most part within the city, people are using the mask pretty well. I know there's some segments of the community that you can get to and people aren't doing social distancing like they should. But the mask thing, I think, is really taking hold, especially with our numbers spiking the last month or so.
I guess my next question might be for Derek and Mike Miller. Since the recreation department is, I guess, letting people like play soccer and basketball, how would this affect that?
The way I read it, I know we've talked about the governor's orders exempting schools, from having to have the mask requirement, but the way that to me that this is written, if you're playing a game of basketball, you're gonna be wearing a mask because you're not socially distanced and you're not outside. So
No, I'm saying like outdoor courts and soccer fields.
well, outdoors exempted.
Everything outdoors is exempted.
Well, when you're socially distanced. Now, to me, that's a pretty
That's what I
objective standard.
I think what's frustrating when I read this ordinance is I'm hearing all these, but not when, all these exceptions. Sorry, the sunlight's right there. With these exceptions, I think kind of defeats the purpose. The issue is to protect people when they're congregating. So we're omitting religious worshiping. Is that right?
Yeah. I just saw polling places.
There's a list.
Number 3, when the individual has a bona fide religious objection to wearing a facial covering or mask. I don't think it addresses services per se.
Now that would mean I'm not allowed to wear a mask because of my religion, not because
I
of
can't think of any faith that would state such. we're saying it's not required to wear one to enter or be inside a polling place, but one of our polling places is City Hall.
Right, I understand, right.
That's where my frustration with that is that people are congregated. Hopefully, we will have the best voter turnout we've ever had in November. People will be congregated outside, and that's a time that I would want to be able to have the right.
I agree there.
I mean, that's frustrating. So I find challenges with several of these exceptions. To me, the spirit of wearing a mask is as healthcare professionals describe it. It's to wear one when you cannot socially distance and you're going to have to be in a confined area or space, which is usually a store or something. Also, we talk about children under the age of 10, but that's not, the age of 10 isn't used on anything that I've heard. It's been like much younger than that. So with all of these exceptions, I couldn't be in favor of, and not just exceptions, I'm not in favor of the ordinance.
Well, keep in mind, we've got two different ordinances here. One that relates to government buildings, that we got to do something to clean that up. Because according to Jason, the one we passed before in our buildings is now moot because of what he did. So we have to do, in order to put that back in effect, we have to pass the one on government buildings. Is that correct, Jason?
Yes, sir, that's my understanding, Mr. Mayor. It's Resolution 20-15. It keeps the same guidelines in place we currently have.
And then we have the other one, which you're talking about with all the exceptions and all that.
So can we, I guess,
We can
pass the 15 and table this and make some amendments to the,
Well, we can't make any amendments to it
oh, we can.
because this is the governor's order, so we can just ignore it.
So these are his provisions that you
yes,
can either opt in or opt out?
Yeah.
If I may, just a moment to clarify that, the governor issued an executive order over the weekend, which specifically authorizes local government, cities and counties to act and face code ordinance. There are some limitations in regards to what can and can't be done. Governor's executive order. This is simply the version that you see before you is actually a model ordinance created by GMA, interpreting the governor's orders with some additions that I made on behalf of the city office of our local requirements. So some of these provisions we can amend with the consultation of council as to whether or not it applies to the executive order, and some we can't. We just have to look at it item by item. And I wanted to address this part of the comments. That is one area that was very specific about the governor's executive order. Not that we can't require masks because it comes to the full place. We can't refuse to allow a person to vote if they refuse to vote. So I know that may be split hairs to some degree. Require mask here in all of the polling place, but we can't turn away a voter if they refuse to wear a mask. But we could potentially make some other arrangements where they can vote within the polling place. So we can't do voting.
We just fine them $25.
Yeah, we give them a warning first.
Oh, I'm sorry, warning.
So if there's a runoff, when they get in trouble. You know, and two, so maybe everybody out there
I
understands.
also think your points well taken in
Yeah.
regards to the 10-year-old. There's some provisions in here that were provided by the model ordinance that you may find with the medical background necessarily.
I'm in favor. If there are two different ordinances, I support our update.
Did you make that in form of a motion?
Yes, sir. I make a motion that the number again, please.
2020-15.
Resolution 20-15.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve resolution 20-15.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And then on 20-13, we're just going to table that one until we get more clarity on what this means.
Yeah, because we just found out about this one today.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, that's right, Councilman Cruz, and the GMA model ordinance was issued today, and I think the concern was, since Mayor and Council doesn't meet again in a regular meeting for 3 weeks, that we needed to get the dialogue started for your consideration.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Time sensitive.
Because
Mayor, if I may, I would ask the mayor to ask for a motion table.
There a motion on that on 20-13?
motion to table 20-13.
Motion by Mr. Goodlett.
Make an amendment.
Is there a second? Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harlan. Now you can,
Well, I was gonna say, if it's 3 weeks until we're meeting again, I mean.
we're gonna have a call meeting to set the millage rate. So, yeah.
We call a meeting.
Okay. Ms. Harlan, yeah, and Lee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Their motion, we adjourn.
So move.